Her heart was heavy, her pockets bare. The baby cried, hunger filled the air. She typed her plan to her,
Who is this? This must be scammers.
but silence echoed, no help came in. Desperation pushed her
My baby is very hungry. This is serious. How can I help her?
Like and subscribe.
The dust in the Lagos air clung to everything, even hope. Amara sat on the cold concrete floor of her one-room apartment, her back leaning against the mouldy wall, her baby whimpering softly on her lap. Her lips were cracked, her stomach groaned, and her eyes were hollow from nights without sleep. The room was barely lit by the dying bulb hanging from an exposed wire, buzzing with each flicker of power. Chimdi, her 8-month-old son, let out a soft, pitiful cry, his tiny fingers tugging at her frayed blouse. He was hungry again, and Amara had nothing left to give him. The last sachet of pap had finished 2 nights ago, and she'd tried feeding him mashed banana yesterday. Banana she had begged for at the back of the market in Oshodi. Amara blinked back tears, rocking him gently. "It's okay, my son. Just sleep. Sleep, Biko." She was 27. A diploma holder. Once full of dreams, laughter, and ambition. But now, her skin was pale from lack of food, her bones sharp beneath the thinning fabric of her dress. Ever since Emeka, her ex-boyfriend, vanished when she got pregnant, life had spiraled into a cruel storm. She had worked as a receptionist at a small logistics company nestled in the bustling outskirts of Lagos. It wasn't much, but it paid the bills and allowed her to take care of her little son, Chimdi. Then one bleak Monday morning, the manager gathered the entire staff in the cramped office and announced that the company was shutting down, effective immediately. No severance, no notice. Just like that, everything crumbled. Since then, she had poured hours into rewriting her CV, sending out job applications, knocking on doors, and following up with polite emails. But every effort was met with silence or rejection. Weeks turned into months, and her meager savings withered away like the last drops of water in a dry season. Now, with rent overdue and the landlord threatening to throw her out by the end of the week, panic gripped her like a cold hand around her throat. The walls of her one-room apartment felt like they were closing in. Chimdi was crying again, hungry, tired, and restless. That night, as the child finally drifted off to sleep with an empty stomach, she reached for her old phone with a cracked screen and began typing, desperation dripping from every word. To Ada Aura, her cousin in Lekki, she sent a pleading message. "Please, I just need 2,000 naira for baby food. I will pay back, I swear." The message was marked read. No reply. To Mama Chinyere, her neighbor downstairs, she wrote, "I know things are tight, but even Gary or Pap, please." The response came almost instantly. "Sorry, I no get." To her pastor's wife, she typed with trembling fingers. "Mummy, please help me. Just anything." Minutes later, a voice note came in. She pressed play, heart pounding. "My dear, you need to pray more. This is a time of testing. God will show up." She dropped the phone on the bed and stared at the ceiling, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. That was the moment Amara broke. For weeks she had held on, clinging to the last threads of hope, of dignity, of belief that something, anything, would change. But in that moment, something inside her crumbled. The tears came hard and fast, wrenching sobs that left her body shaking. She curled up beside Chimdi, who stirred in her sleep and began to cry too, his tiny voice merging with his mother's anguish. Amara held him close, whispering apologies into the dark. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm trying." When the tears finally slowed, Amara reached for her battered phone again. The screen flickered weakly as she unlocked it. Her fingers hovered over the keypad. There was one last person she hadn't texted, Sister Nkechi, a kind woman from church who had once offered to help if she ever needed it. She began typing, eyes blurry and hands trembling. But in her desperation, she mistyped the last digit of the number. She didn't notice. She just wanted someone, anyone, to listen. She typed, "Good evening, Ma. Please, I don't mean to disturb you. My name is Amara. I haven't eaten in days. My baby is hungry. Please, help me with anything you can. Even 1,000 naira. May God bless you richly." Then, just as she hit send, the phone died. The screen went black. At the other end of the city, Victoria Island, Lagos, Kenichukwu Agu sat in his sleek high-rise office overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. The city's chaos was muffled from this height. Inside, everything was pristine: marble floors, glass walls, cold silence. He had just wrapped up a Zoom call with investors in the UK and was waiting for a confirmation text from a foreign client interested in a prime real estate deal. His phone buzzed. He reached for it absent-mindedly, expecting business. Instead, he saw a message from an unfamiliar number. He frowned. Probably a scammer or another beggar trying their luck. His thumb hovered over the delete icon, but paused. He read the message again. "My baby is hungry." Something in the words pulled at him. He read it a third time. Slowly.
My baby is very hungry. This is serious. How can I help her?
He hadn't been called Sir Ma in a while. The tone was desperate, but humble. Real. Against all reason, Kenichukwu typed a reply. "Who is this?" Back in age, Amara sat on the edge of her bed, borrowing her neighbor's power bank. As soon as her phone powered on, she checked for a reply, and gasped. "Who is this?" Her heart raced. Who had she texted? Fear prickled her skin. What if it was a scammer? Or someone dangerous? But desperation was louder than caution. She typed quickly. "I'm sorry, Sir Ma. I think I sent the message to the wrong number. Please forgive me." A few seconds passed. Then the person responded. "Where are you located?" Amara hesitated. Should she say? She typed, "Lagos." Another pause. Longer this time. Then came the message that made her sit bolt upright. "Send your account number." Amara blinked. Was this a joke? Was someone playing with her pain? Her hands shook as she typed out her Zenith bank account number. She stared at the screen, barely breathing. 2 minutes passed. Then, her phone buzzed again. Credit alert. 500,000 naira. She stared at the message, mouth open. 500,000. Not 5,000. Not even 50. Tears flooded her eyes again, but this time, from something she hadn't felt in what seemed like forever. Hope. Amara let out a piercing scream, a mix of shock, disbelief, and overwhelming relief. Her neighbor, Mama Ifema, burst into the room, eyes wide. "What happened? What is it?" Amara was shaking all over, her phone clutched to her chest like it was made of gold. Jesus. "Look," she gasped, thrusting the screen toward her. "Someone sent me money. 500,000. 500,000 naira." Mama Ifema blinked, leaned in, and gasped. "Ha! Amara. Are you serious?" "I don't know them. I texted the wrong number, and they just sent it." Amara cried, sinking to her knees in disbelief. Sobs racked her body, loud, uncontrollable, freeing. Her baby stirred on the thin mattress beside her, and she reached for him, pulling him into her trembling arms. "We're okay now, my love. God did it." That night, Amara didn't just eat, she feasted. With trembling hands, she withdrew money and bought diapers, paracetamol syrup, baby milk, Gary, rice, beans, tomatoes, onions, and, yes, meat. Real meat. She even added Milo and milk for herself, something she hadn't tasted in months. Her room, once filled with the heavy silence of hunger, now echoed with bubbling pots and the giggles of her baby. The scent of stew filled the air. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Amara lay down on her mat, full and at peace. Hunger no longer whispered in the dark. She slept, cradling her child, and smiling. The next morning, as sunlight filtered through the thin curtain in her small room, Amara's phone buzzed. A new message. "Can I call you?" Her heart skipped. It was the same number. The stranger who had sent her 500,000 naira the night before. She swallowed hard, then replied, "Yes." A few seconds later, the phone rang. She answered quickly, nerves dancing in her chest. "Hello," she said, her voice cautious. The voice on the other end was calm, deep, and formal. "Amara." "Yes, sir. I'm sorry to disturb you." "No," he said gently. "I wanted to hear your voice. I'm in Lagos. Would you be willing to meet?" Amara paused. Fear and uncertainty clouded her thoughts. Who was this man? What did he want? "I'll come to a public place," he added, sensing her hesitation. "No pressure. I just want to talk." After a long silence, she whispered, "Okay." 2 days later, Eco Hotel Cafe. Amara arrived 15 minutes early. She wore a modest, second-hand peach gown she had bought for 1,500 naira at the market. Her hair was neatly brushed and pulled back. In her small handbag, she carried Chimdi's milk, wipes, and a clean napkin, just in case. When she saw him, her breath caught. He was nothing like she had imagined. Not a middle-aged man in an agbada or someone with a pompous air. He was tall, clean-shaven, and dressed in a simple navy blue polo shirt and tailored slacks. He looked like someone who belonged on TV, or in a boardroom. But it was his eyes that struck her the most. They were warm, gentle, and deeply human. "Amara," he said with a soft smile, rising to shake her hand. "You're real." "So are you," she whispered, stunned. They sat and talked, over coffee she didn't even touch at first, still overwhelmed by the elegance of the place. But slowly, as the conversation unfolded, she relaxed. She told him everything. How her father had died in an accident when she was 8. How her mother struggled to raise her and her siblings, doing petty trading until illness took her away during Amara's final year in secondary school. How she fought to survive, got a job, and fell in love with a man who abandoned her the moment she got pregnant. She spoke of the loneliness, the rejection, the hunger, the nights she cried silently so Chimdi wouldn't wake up. Kenichukwu listened quietly, never interrupting, never looking at his phone. Just listening, truly listening. "And yet," he said finally, his voice soft, "you didn't give up." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "I wanted to. Many times. But every time I looked at Chimdi, I couldn't. He didn't ask to be here. I had to keep going." In the weeks that followed, Kenichukwu remained in touch. Not in a controlling or demanding way, but as a steady presence. He didn't just throw money at her and disappear. He invested in her future. He enrolled her in a 6-month vocational training course in HR management. When she excelled in the first month, he offered her a job as a receptionist at his company, a chance to work, learn, and rebuild. He paid for a nanny to watch Chimdi during the day. He even helped her find a modest, clean 2-bedroom apartment in Ogudu and paid 6 months' rent in advance. Slowly, Amara began to change. Her cheeks filled out. Her skin glowed. Her eyes no longer darted around in fear. She started walking with her shoulders back. She laughed more. She spoke with confidence. She wore clean clothes, held her son's hand with pride, and wore her dignity again, like a crown. And for the first time in years, Amara no longer felt invisible. She felt seen. 6 months later. "Why me?" she asked one day as they sat at a quiet lounge in Lekki. "Because the world ignored you," he said. "But I saw a woman who deserved more." They were silent for a moment, then he asked, "Do you believe in second chances?" She looked at him, blinking tears away. "I think I do now." 1 year later, Ilash Beach. He proposed with her son beside them. Kenichukwu knelt in the sand, held out a ring, and said, "Amara, you sent a wrong message, but it brought me the right woman. Will you be my wife?" She nodded, sobbing, and Chimdi clapped. The months following Kenichukwu's proposal felt like a dream to Amara. She had gone from poverty and despair to peace and love. She still pinched herself every morning, half afraid to wake up back in her old room in age with Chimdi crying from hunger. But the fairy tale didn't last long before the shadows came creeping in. The woman from the past. Her name was Cassandra. Beautiful. Bold. Ruthless. She didn't arrive like a whisper or a warning. She came like a storm, loud, uninvited, and unapologetic. It was a warm Thursday afternoon. Amara was standing outside the creche, cradling Chimdi in her arms, smiling as he sucked on a biscuit. Life had begun to feel stable again. Peaceful. Safe. Then, the black SUV screeched to a halt inches from her feet. The driver door slammed, and out stepped a tall, caramel-skinned woman in a black designer jumpsuit and 6-inch stilettos. Her makeup was flawless, her weave long and swaying like a lion's manner. She looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. But her eyes were sharp. Cruel. "You must be the charity case," she said with a mocking smile, scanning Amara from head to toe like dirt on her shoe. Amara blinked, confused. "I beg your pardon." The woman took a step closer. "I'm Cassandra, the real woman in Kenichukwu's life." A cold weight dropped in Amara's stomach. "You think he loves you?" "Please," Cassandra scoffed. "You're a phase. A pity project. A mistake he'll soon correct." Amara's knees weakened. She clutched Chimdi tighter, struggling to breathe. That night, she confronted Kenichukwu, shaking. He didn't flinch. "I should have told you about her. We dated years ago. She was manipulative. Controlling. I ended things, but she never truly let go." He reached for her hand. "You have nothing to worry about. I love you. Only you." But Cassandra wasn't done. The threats begin. 2 days later, a parcel arrived at Amara's apartment. No name. No return address. Inside was a dead bird, feathers matted with blood. A note soaked in red ink, or was it blood, was attached. "You stole what's mine. Watch your back." Amara screamed. Her hands trembled as she dropped the box. Her knees gave out. She collapsed onto the floor in tears, holding Chimdi like a shield. This wasn't what she wanted. Not drama. Not war. Just peace. She begged Kenichukwu that night. "Please. Let's end this. She's dangerous. If anything happens to you or Chimdi." But he shook his head, jaw clenched. "She wants to break us. And I won't let her win." The attack. It happened on a rainy Friday night. Amara booked an Uber as usual after work. But when the car pulled up, something felt off. The driver wore a cap that hid his face. He barely greeted her. She hesitated, but it was late and storming, and Chimdi was with the nanny. They drove for 10 minutes. Then passed the usual turn to her estate. Her heartbeat spiked. "Excuse me, where are we going?" The driver didn't answer. "Hello." "Stop the car." Still silence. Adrenaline surged. With trembling hands, She reached for the door handle. Unlocked. Still moving. She didn't think. She jumped. She hit the ground hard, rolling into a muddy gutter. Pain exploded in her arm and shoulder. Everything blurred. The aftermath. The next morning, she woke in a hospital bed, her arm in a sling. A uniformed officer stood at her side. "You're lucky," he said grimly. One of the men confessed. "Men?" Amara whispered. He nodded. "Cassandra hired 2 guys to scare you off. Kidnap you. Threaten you. Record the whole thing. But one of them backed out last minute and reported everything." Amara's mouth went dry. That week, Cassandra was arrested. The woman who thought herself untouchable, who thought fear could buy love, was finally behind bars. But for Amara, the scars of that night would take longer to heal. The wedding, a victory over shadows. The wedding was like something pulled straight from the pages of a dream or a Nollywood fairy tale. Held in a quiet, elegant garden in Ikoyi, the air was rich with music and sunlight. White petals floated gently across a still blue pool. Silk-draped chairs lined the aisle. Cameras clicked. Journalists whispered. Dignitaries sat beside old classmates and secret rivals. But to Amara, they all melted into the background. She could only see him, Kenichukwu, waiting with tearful eyes and a trembling smile. And beside her, tiny hand tucked in hers, was Chimdi, now in a miniature tuxedo, beaming with pride. Amara's dress flowed like a river of light, her veil fluttering with each step. Her heart thundered in her chest, not with fear, but awe. How had she come from a dark, hungry room to this sacred moment? She had nothing once. And now she was walking into everything. As she reached the altar, Kenichukwu reached for her hand like it was the most precious thing on earth. The officiant smiled warmly, voice thick with emotion. This union was written not by man, but by mercy. They exchanged vows, tears flowing freely. "Amara, I was nothing but ashes, but you gave me grace. You didn't rescue me, you believed in me. Kenichukwu, you reminded me what truly matters. You taught me love with no price tag and faith with no guarantees." When they kissed, the crowd stood, clapping, shouting, crying. And little Chimdi clapped too, laughing with joy. "Mummy," he squealed. And she bent to hug him, the happiest woman in the world. Final epilogue. Amara's story was turned into a best-selling book and a Netflix film. But she never let it get to her head. She remained grounded, still mentoring young mothers, still speaking hope into lives others had written off.
Thank you for watching. Tell us your opinion in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel Chukwudi Lawler Studio at Chukwudi Lawler.
Her heart was heavy,